So God of War on the PS4 was one of my favorite games of the past few years, and as a matter of fact, it's one of those experiences that I am looking forward to seeing more of into the next generation. I think that there is no doubt at this point that a sequel is most likely going to happen, given of course the game's massive success, and there's a high chance that this might very well happen sometimes after the launch of the new PlayStation 5. Besides, there's a ton of anticipation for a story continuation, especially now that the game ended with a major cliffhanger, and of course the fight between Kratos and Thor pretty much being teased over there following the events of the main story campaign. But today it seems that we're going to find out more about what to expect from the upcoming God of War title thanks to a recent PlayStation interview with the game's director, and you might even be surprised by the direction that the story is going to take, as it might just go way beyond what Kratos is doing in its confrontation with the Norse gods and going a little bit more into his relationship with his family. So it all sounds very exciting. Let's just dive right into it. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up on it would be super appreciated. Anyway, I definitely recommend you guys go ahead and check out the entire interview, as it goes into a lot of details about the process of recreating the main character, the game's development, and various design decisions that have been made throughout it. There's also the bit about the story of Kratos meeting Faye that I want to go over in just a little bit, but it makes a lot of sense for why God of War's next title is not just going to happen, it's most likely going to be more ambitious than ever before. In 2018, the game quickly managed to become one of Sony's best sold exclusives and even won the title of Game of the Year against other really good candidates that have been released back then. It's also one of the best sold games on the platform to date, with over 10 million copies sold by the end of 2019, so it makes total sense for why all parties involved would be interested to continue it. But I am having high expectations for any upcoming God of War game, especially right now, as it looks like more and more likely to be a PlayStation 5 release, and I'm really curious to see how this is going to take advantage of all of the new cool tech that is going to be added in the new generation of consoles. I think it is no longer just fan speculation that the sequel is possible, it is most likely already in the works and probably has been for at least a year at this point. Thanks to a job listing from June last year, for example, we already had hints that the work on the new game was already happening even back then, as an opening, for example, for the combat designer position was listing the God of War series, and to be more specific, the 2018 PS4 release. Moving on though, what's the earliest in which we can expect the next God of War game to drop? Since it's unlikely to even drop this year, it is most probably going to only happen on the PS5, but thanks to some of the info out there, we can make a general idea of when that is exactly going to happen. In a previous interview from 2018, the game's director also mentioned that the game took roughly 5 years to develop, of course talking about the first game that was released on the PS4, but most of that time he said was spent on creating the game engine and the various more heavy game mechanics. With all of that being done now, what this means is that, at least in theory, the future titles should take less time to create, in which case I think that it totally makes sense that a date such as, for example, 2021 or at the latest 2022 is possible, given that it's already been almost 2 years since the previous game has pretty much been released. Now there's also some speculation out there from some fans that the new God of War game might even drop as soon as the launch of the new PlayStation 5, but honestly I doubt that. I think that it's going to take a little bit longer than that for that to happen, especially since Santa Monica Studios would take a little bit more time to perfect their game before launching it on the new tech. So this is what I'm expecting, 2021 at the earliest, or better yet 2022. But as far as the story goes, it is still going to continue with the Norse mythology, of course, from where it left in the previous title, but there are many questions that were left unanswered by the previous game. There's characters that I would love to see more information on, and I would also like to see the conclusion between Kratos fighting the Norse gods, especially Thor, of course, which I think is going to be an amazing fight and like one of the main fights in the game, though I believe that it's well, it's not going to be like the main one. I believe that there's going to be something even bigger than Thor in the game as well, so there's been indications that there's going to be even more massive fights in God of War, well, 2 on the PS5 than in the first one on the PS4, so definitely looking forward to that. It seems that there's many ideas floating around on how to move forward with the story over here, with the game director even mentioning that there is enough to fill 5 games, but most probably that is not going to happen and there's going to be way less games than that. While the exact number of sequels haven't been revealed yet, I am fully expecting for a maximum of 2 more games to be released after this point, so something like a 21 to 22 release for God of War 2 and the third and final one sometimes after after that, maybe 2025, 26, somewhere along those lines, but it would be awesome to see a generation of consoles having two God of War games, not like how it was now when we only had one God of War game. So definitely something that I am looking forward to for the upcoming generation of consoles. But the one bit of info that is probably most notable in the new interview is the direction that the story might take, as it's very likely we're finally going to see how Kratos met Faye and what led to him changing into the person we got to know in the newest game. I'm just going to quickly show you that part from the interview right about now.
I wanted to have a character that felt like there's a really strong reason for why they're doing it, but you get to know her throughout all of this, and you also get to understand that she has way more power than all of them. I don't know how we're going to tell this or when we're going to tell this, but I really want to tell that story of Kratos and Faye meeting.
So it seems very likely that the story in the next God of War title is going to evolve way past the confrontation with the remaining Norse gods, and it's going to continue to put a focus on the relationships between all of these various main characters, especially between Kratos and his wife, not just his son. And honestly, I think that this is an excellent idea. In fact, one of the main appeals of the game were its excellent storytelling and the believable relationships that have been formed between the main characters. And it's not just that, I think that there are many folks like me who would love to see a little bit more of the story between God of War 3 and the fourth game and what happened in the time that we weren't present over there with the character. It is very likely that we might even get to see these relationships between Kratos and Faye as a form of a flashback during the main story in the beginning, for example, of the next game. Maybe something that the game could start out with, kind of like an intro sequence, so that it sets the tone and the mood for the story, following of course the events that we already know unfolded in the previous game. Or it could also be something that is revealed to us towards the end of the game, maybe something kind of like a revelation very similar to the one towards the end of the first God of War, when in the process of finding out who Faye was and why she put us on this journey in the first place, it also led us to understanding who Atreus really is. So that would be probably a great moment to add, kind of like this suspenseful revelation that will make you go like, oh, I definitely didn't expect that, or I want to see more of this, I want to find out more about these characters. And yeah, this is something that could be really well made, especially since the first story was so well said. So yeah, definitely some really cool stuff here. And besides, I believe that Faye's role in the overall story is obviously very important, and she is basically the entire reason for why we began our journey in the first place, and it was the driving force behind all of the discoveries that have been made about, well, who the boy really is and what was to become of him, or at the very least some hint to what is going to become of him. No matter how this is going to happen, I think this is going to be a major part of the story, or at the very least one of those moments that are going to be very important in the upcoming game, and probably a lot of stuff is going to make more sense after that, after all of this is revealed to us. But as Corey put it himself, it's not even certain yet at what point in the game this is going to happen, but he really wants it to be done. So this is something that I also want to see. I think that there's a lot of opportunities over here for more character development, which were already the strong point of the series to begin with, or at the very least the previous title in the series. Anyway, before finishing the video, I want to quickly touch on the subject of the fights in the upcoming God of War title. Of course, the previous ones in the current game were absolutely epic. Some of them were absolutely amazing, I definitely love them, and I actually want to see more of those, especially the huge scale fights. And according to most of the information on the internet, it seems that that is also the direction that the studio wants to go into. At the very least, a confirmation from the environmental artist from the game. It seems that there's going to be more big fights, maybe even bigger fights in the next God of War title. Of course, this was something that was confirmed as early as 2018, so I'm really curious to see what exactly has happened since then. What types of fights are they going to do in the upcoming game? Of course, we have the fight with Thor, which is most probably going to be an epic one. I'm already expecting a ton of, videos on the internet, a ton of memes even, maybe, I'm not entirely sure. But there's also speculation about a potential fight with Odin, which would be really nice towards the end of the game, maybe something towards those lines. But I think that Santa Monica Studios is most probably going to surprise us in one way or another. I don't think that the Thor fight is going to be the last fight in the game, even though even that in itself is going to be pretty damn good. So A lot of speculation going on at the moment, of course, a lot of directions in which the game can go into. So yeah, it's going to be some really exciting times in the upcoming year. Now let me know down below what are your thoughts on these. Obviously the fight with Thor is going to be a major one, but what else are you looking forward to seeing in the next game whenever it happens? Comment your opinion down below, and in the meantime consider hitting that subscribe button if you want to see more of awesome gaming news on this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and peace.